There's zero shortcomings for any of these players. They were all absolutely outstanding. They defined the term GOAT respectively. From outlandish records that will never be broken to making up terms because of how much you terrorized opposing corners, there's zero doubt all of these guys have the guts, grit, and talent to be up here. I know I will get flamed for not having certain players up here, so I'm going to give a small tribute to the following players: Don Hutson, Chris Carter, Art Monk, Lance Altworth, Michael Irvin, and lastly, Marvin Harrison. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. Coming into my honorable mention, I'm going to have Steve Largent. Now just stick with me for a moment here because I know a lot of people might have him even higher on their list. When it comes to Steve Largent, the only knock against Steve Largent is when he played, and that's not really a knock against him because more or less it wasn't the passing era. So unfortunately for him, his stats won't be as inflated as other players on this list. As much as I wanted to put him up higher, it's already incredibly tough to rank the top receivers. Playing his entire career with Seattle from 1976 to 1989 for a total of 14 seasons, the dude didn't put up any single season jaw-dropping numbers or records or stats. But he also played during a primary running era. By the time he decided to hang up the cleats in 1989, he had every single record for receiving by any player, all the way up until the passing era occurred, or what we know it as today. At just 5'11", he's the shortest player on this list, and that's no easy task. Being a short receiver always has its quirks, like another Seattle legend, Doug Baldwin. But nonetheless, Largent is a legend. I really couldn't be mad at you if you had him in your top 3 of all time, it just makes sense. Largent's single best season came in 1979, where he would put up 1,237 yards along with 9 touchdowns on only 66 catches. He would also finish top 6 in MVP voting that year. Overall in his career, I think that the most amazing thing is that he played 200 games. That's not that easy, especially in the time he played in and considering his small size. He would wind up finishing with 819 catches, 13,000 yards, which is 19th of all time, and even 100 touchdowns. Being elected to 6 Pro Bowls, 4 second-team All-Pros, and 1 first-team All-Pro. Coming in at number 5, and as much as I hate to do this and as much as it hurts me, I'm going to have Calvin Johnson down here at number 5. It really does hurt to have him that low, but I can't really do much else. Yet another stud player who had their careers ruined by Detroit. In my younger years, turning the television on and seeing Megatron at work was like watching Bob Ross paint. It was beautiful. If we were ranking this strictly off raw talent, Johnson is easily a lock at top 2 ever. Unfortunately, that's not all this is. Calvin's prime was absolutely electric. His best year coming into his 2012 campaign, where he would put up an astonishing 1,964 yards with his 122 receptions. Even though he couldn't find the end zone with only 5 touchdowns, and his 122.8 yards per game is the best in a single season since 1982 and has remained the best since, making it the 4th best of all time. What holds Calvin down though is mainly 2 things. The first being his short career of only 9 seasons. Secondly, almost entirely due to his short career, his numbers really aren't that great compared to the legends. Unfortunately, because of the Lions and also because he prioritized his health and safety, we never got to see the full career of Calvin. He wound up with 731 catches, 11,619 yards, and 83 touchdowns. He would also be elected to 6 Pro Bowls, 3 All-Pro first teams, and 1 All-Pro second team. What if Calvin had not retired early? Would we be having a different conversation? Making his statement and doing pretty much whatever he wanted is the definition of Terrell Owens, and that's why T.O. is going to be here at number 4. Now, he's not here at number 4 just because of his good personality, even though we all know a good personality is important. He's here because he was a stud on the football field. Having a long 17-year career and being 6'3" definitely is the makings for an all-timer. Being drafted in 1996 by the 49ers, his breakout season, which also happens to be his best, came in the year 2000, where he would put up 1,451 yards and 13 touchdowns to his 97 catches. What makes T.O. incredible isn't any legacy-defining moment or even season, but his longevity and consistency. At the age of 37 in his final NFL season, he would sign with the Bengals and have a pretty solid year, catching 72 passes for 983 yards and 9 touchdowns. While those might not be outstanding numbers outside of a few others, no receivers make it into their late 30s, let alone have wide receiver 1 numbers at 37. When he decided to retire, it wasn't without leaving a mark on the NFL landscaping, amassing more than 1,000 receptions, 15,934 receiving yards, which is third all time, and 153 touchdowns, also third of all time. A true game changer. He would also be elected to 6 Pro Bowls and 5 All-Pro first teams. Even though he never got a ring, he would still make an impact in the Super Bowl he played in, having 9 catches for 122 yards. There's no what-ifs about him, but he was just astonishingly great. Before I move into the top 3, I would like to say thank you guys all so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. It does take a long time for me to make these videos, and if you do appreciate the work I'm doing, make sure to comment below, and so we can discuss and engage and have a conversation about why you think I'm right or why you think I'm wrong, and let me know your list down in the comments below. But once again, thank you guys all so much for your support, and I'm out. Coming in at number 3 and mossing his opponents along the way, I'm going to have Randy Moss here. Now, I definitely could understand why you would have him top 2, but in my personal opinion, he's number 3. He was so incredibly talented that anything outside of the top 5 is just ridiculous. Randy Moss is the most talented player to ever catch passes. As much as I would personally argue that Moss is the best ever, his stats and even accolades just can't back it up. He may also be the most dominating player most of us have ever laid our eyes on. Being drafted in 1998, he would burst onto the scene with a whopping 1,313 yards and 17 touchdowns on only 69 catches. Nice. He would win Offensive Rookie of the Year and finish 3rd in both MVP and Offensive Player of the Year voting that year as well. Depending on the perspective, he has multiple seasons that could be argued his best, but to me, you just can't top 2007. The year that the Patriots would go undefeated all the way to the Super Bowl until the Giants dethroned them. Moss would have 98 catches for close to 1,500 yards and an NFL record 23 receiving touchdowns. This is what I imagine when I hear the term mossed. Scoring a touchdown on some dude's head, not just some dude, but the best talent in the world. You're just casually jumping over them and plucking the ball out of the air. Although the Pats would lose the Super Bowl, Moss still had one of the best seasons ever. Throughout his 14-year career, he amassed 15,292 yards, which is 4th all-time, and 156 touchdowns, which is 2nd all-time, on 982 catches. He would be elected to 6 Pro Bowls and 4 All-Pro first teams. With Moss, while yes, he was consistent, he wasn't nearly as consistent as the next 2 guys. But what would have happened if Moss didn't fall off towards the end of his career? This one I know I'm going to get a little bit of hate for, but you just can't disrespect him. While he wasn't as flashy as the other guys, I definitely think Larry Fitzgerald deserves to be number 2. He was nothing short of GOAT status. Larry was incredible, being drafted in 2004 by the Cardinals 3rd overall. They took a gamble on a guy and it paid out for them for about 17 seasons. While having an okay rookie season, he really burst out in his sophomore season, having over 1,400 yards and 10 touchdowns on 103 catches. Looking over his career, he had over 100 targets in every season but his final COVID-shortened 2020 season. Larry defines consistency, having some of the best hands ever, not dropping many passes. Fun fact about Fitz, he would finish his career with more tackles, 41, than he did drop passes, 29. One thing that's crazy to think about is the fact that he had 34 different starting quarterbacks and still had as incredible of a career as he did. Never having over 1,500 yards in one season, but still having the 2nd most receiving yards by a player is just a nod to his consistency and longevity. I mentioned this earlier with T.O., but Fitz really takes the cake over T.O. Fitz never really had accolades either. He does have 11 Pro Bowls, but he only has 1 All-Pro first team and 2 second-team All-Pros. Fitz never was dominant like the other players in this list, but you could count on Fitz to catch the ball, and he could get you out of sticky situations. He would wind up with 17,492 yards, which is 2nd all-time, 121 touchdowns, which is 6th all-time, and 1,432 catches, which is 2nd most of all time. While I do find myself asking what Larry could have done with a dominating quarterback at the helm, I stop, because either way, he left us with some of the most memorable plays ever, including this incredible play. Being Being the best to ever do it at any position in the NFL always sparks interest among us fans, and we are always having debates with each other about who we think or who statistically is the best. But when it comes to wide receiver, Jerry Rice takes that cake easy. Playing in the NFL for 20 years is already an incredible feat, but at the wide receiver position in specific, it's unheard of. To really hammer home how great this guy's career was, despite not winning a single MVP, he finished top 7 in voting 6 different times and being the runner-up twice. In 1985, the 49ers selected Rice 16th overall, hoping to get a pretty solid guy. Little did they know at the time they were drafting the greatest to ever do it. His rookie season, he only started in 4 games and still finished with 927 yards and 3 touchdowns on just 49 catches. He really blew up in his second season, erupting for 1,570 yards and 15 touchdowns on 86 catches. While he has many career moments, even in career years, I think it's the best that we look at his career as an overall, or else I'd be here for an hour. He would finish with over 1,500 total yards 6 times and finish with over 1,000 yards 14 times in a single season. He would also have 10 seasons of double-digit touchdowns from scrimmage, which is incredible. But his best single-season performance being in 1987 with a whopping 23 total touchdowns. He would continue playing all the way into his 40s, playing until the young age of 42. A cool fun fact, no other player over the age of 40, besides Tom Brady, has more than 0 receiving yards. Brett Favre has negative receiving yards. Rice was an integral part, if not the most important part, of the 49ers dynasty, helping them win 3 Super Bowls. By the time he would hang up the cleats all the way in 2004, he would finish with the all-time receiving record for pretty much every single record. He would wind up with 1,549 receptions, almost 23,000 receiving yards, and 197 receiving touchdowns, all of which are obviously first all-time. He would also be elected to 13 Pro Bowls and 9 All-Pro first teams with 1 second-team All-Pro. Also winning Offensive Player of the Year twice and finishing top 5 in Offensive Player of the Year voting another 6 times. He would also win 3 Super Bowls and earn a Super Bowl MVP to add to his collection. There's no debate that Jerry Rice is the greatest receiver ever. None whatsoever. No questions or what if. Just pure GOAT status.